Have you ever watched someone's life change in a single minute? Imagine a courtroom where one man's words decide whether you get probation or prison. And then imagine that same judge getting exposed in front of everyone. Today's story is about a prosecutor who did the unthinkable to stop a judge who had been quietly destroying lives for 15 years. Stay with me. This gets explosive. Sit down. The command was thin and cold. The judge didn't even look up. The words struck like a thrown stone. Aaron Blake, immaculately dressed, his leather briefcase beside him, stayed standing. The judge's face turned crimson. He brought his gavel down so hard the whole room flinched. 60 days in the county lockup, the judge declared. Next time you think you own the room, maybe you'll think twice. That sentence fell like an anvil. Aaron folded into the wooden chair with the calm of someone used to pain, not brokenness. The camera of the gallery zeroes in on his initials on the briefcase. A.B. The onlookers whisper. A prosecutor sentenced like any stranger. Why? A slip of paper on the bench would later show only petty charges, but the weight of history made the sentence feel monstrous. Judge Harold Pierce had been on that bench for 15 years. To the city's social clubs and editorial boards, he was tough but fair, an Iron Man of order. In public, he spoke about balance and character. In private, he taught his clerks that respect and place mattered more than chance. He never used slurs. He never gave sound bites that would get him canceled. He used tone, implication, and a ledger of character to mete out far harsher punishments to people who didn't fit his idea of respectability. To some, Pierce was a protector of order. To many families, he was a slow-acting wrecking machine. Across dozens of cases, a similar pattern emerged. A young black man caught with a small amount of drugs would walk out with years of incarceration. A white peer with the same facts walked away with probation and counseling. A black attorney's motions would be curtly rejected. The same question from a white colleague would be praised as helpful. Witness the numbers, and the story becomes frighteningly plain. In Pierce's courtroom, black defendants routinely received far harsher outcomes, sometimes 30 to 50% worse than white defendants charged with identical offenses. But Pierce was surgical. He cloaked prejudice in phrases about moral foundation and community standards. He framed punishment as correction and kept his job untouchable. Aaron Blake had spent 15 years as an aggressive, meticulous prosecutor, the sort of man whose offices smelled of coffee and case files. He had a law degree from a top school, medals from professional associations, and an unshakable belief that the system could be made to work. And then his younger brother, Michael, was stopped in Pierce's district. A routine traffic pull turned into a resisting arrest charge. Michael, a senior exec with kids and a spotless record, found himself in the same theater Aaron had watched for years. The judge's bench, the coded lecture, the escalated sentence. For Aaron, this was personal. For Aaron, this was a pattern. For Aaron, this was the last straw. Instead of filing a quiet complaint, Aaron assembled a file room. 15 years of sentencing records, side-by-side comparisons, statistical runs that made his stomach churn. He enlisted a statistician, an independent analyst who reran the numbers again and again until the results stopped being noise and became undeniable. An average 42% harsher sentences for black defendants in Pierce's courtroom. In some offense categories, the gap exceeded 60%. Numbers were one thing, but Aaron also needed first-hand proof, the kind of human testimony that would survive a courtroom's skepticism. He quietly interviewed court reporters, clerks, and public defenders. Chapter Haj Meta, pause, Sexco, Senna 0.05. He listened to stories, people who had walked out of the courtroom and watched their lives collapse. Somewhere between spreadsheets and human testimony, a plan formed. What Aaron proposed next was dangerous, radical, and to many of his colleagues, insane. He would intentionally become the test case. He would present himself in front of Pierce, provoke the same pattern of behavior the judge had displayed for years, and make sure it was all on the official record. It meant risking his career, his reputation, and his freedom. But as Aaron put it to his inner circle, if the evidence is there and we do nothing, more lives will be broken. Few people knew the full scope of the plan. His deputy, Sarah, a small, quietly fierce lawyer, and one trusted public defender were the only ones in on the edges. The rest of the office believed Aaron was simply pushing for a high-profile hearing. Aaron arranged for a traffic stop to happen in Pierce's jurisdiction. He made sure the officer's report and the charges could be documented and reviewed. Aggressive behavior, failure to comply, the kinds of charges that could be inflated by a courtroom predisposition. Michael's case provided the script. Aaron adjusted nothing else. He carried his prosecutor's badge openly when he entered the courtroom. He sat as any defendant would, watched the judge's face, and let the system move. What the judge could not know, and what many would later call audacious, was that Aaron's arrest was a piece of an enormous puzzle. An orchestrated demonstration designed to expose a pattern visible only when someone with both courage and documentation pushed the system to react. The judge's voice was the same he'd used for years. Clipped, corrective, final. 60 days, he said. The shock in the gallery was visible. Aaron rose slowly. Your Honor, he said, calm so still it registered as an instrument. I request permission to speak. The judge reflexively dismissed him, but Aaron's next words landed harder than any gavel. I am Aaron Blake, senior prosecutor, lead of the Civil Rights Division. The room froze. Paper rustled. The judge's composure cracked. Aaron produced a sealed dossier and a set of credentials. He announced that the office had been investigating the judge for months. Statistical anomalies, audio recordings, comparative sentencing memos, and witness statements. He said he had placed himself in Pierce's courtroom to capture firsthand that same conduct the files revealed. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the courtroom, the place where Pierce had ruled for so long, began to rearrange itself. Aaron presented the numbers, case-by-case comparisons, and excerpts from recorded chamber conversations. The recordings were clinical. Pierce's private comments, once soft and safely private, played into the open. Comments about these people and lessons that read like a manual for harsher sentences. Witnesses, including a former court reporter who had feared retaliation for years, testified about the judge's instructions on decorum and appropriate punishments. The statistics and the audio dovetailed into a damning whole. A federal investigator in the room made notes. An independent judicial oversight representative, present because the state had received anonymous complaints, exchanged looks with agents. The prosecutorial team produced an emergency suspension order signed that very morning by the Chief Justice, a document that rendered the judge powerless in his own courtroom. The gavel clattered and lay on the floor like a relic. Pierce, who had once used that same hammer to send people away, now watched his authority evaporate. Federal marshals entered the chamber. Papers were sealed. Every case Pierce had adjudicated was now flagged for immediate review. As the judge was escorted from the bench in handcuffs, he mouthed one thing, the same justification he had repeated in private and public. Tough on crime. Order matters. Aaron looked at him, steady. You demanded order, he said. You decided who deserved order, based on who they were. Now you will answer to the law. The fallout was swift. Appeals were reopened. Dozens of convictions were reviewed. Some sentences were overturned. Men and women who had been forced into long terms were granted resentencing or had their records wiped. The probe that Aaron had set in motion birthed something bigger, a new protocol for detecting and proving judicial bias. Other districts began to examine their records. More judges were reviewed. Aaron didn't balk. He was promoted to lead a new civil rights division charged with rooting out judicial misconduct. However, he measured victory carefully, as hundreds of cases